Now James Carver, our expert on Somaliland.
I don't know about that. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Roddas. Again, backing up what Javier Nart said, that was a very consummate and actually very interesting with respect. I listened to some of your colleagues and sometimes you're a bit, drifting off a bit, but that really was very interesting. I certainly pick up on the comments you made about the importance of this region. It's just a shame that there are just a dozen colleagues from the AFAT committee here. So I think work has to be done actually internationally and certainly across the institutions to actually sort of highlight the awareness. Just with just a dozen of us here, I don't think that really sort of bodes well for interest within the Parliament, the parliamentary institution anyway. I agree with your comments about the strategic and geographical importance. I want to elaborate on your comments about, you touched on the extension of the Horn of Africa, how it's actually extended. And of course that's extended because there has been such displacement across the Horn. And again, I don't think people really understand how many displaced people there are across the Horn of Africa. You touched on the Yemen conflict in relation to its close proximity. And what struck me when I was on a private visit to Somaliland last year was, one of the things I wanted to do was visit a Yemeni refugee camp. And it was quite apparent that there wasn't such a thing. And the reason being is that the Yemeni refugees had just very much integrated with the very open and hospitable Somaliland people, which was fantastic. So very, very difficult actually sort of to get a take because people are just assimilated so well, which is actually, to my mind, a great trait and speaks volumes of the hospitality of the Somaliland people. Really wanted to go on. You spoke about the projects of Somalia, and it was, as was said earlier on, there has to be a solution to Somalia. I don't see Somalia as a project, so I see Somalia really as a misnomer. It was regrettable that it was formed in the way it was, and I think after 25 years self-declared independence, Somaliland, you spoke about finding a solution to, in effect, Pico Sykes, and I think Somaliland taking their chance. Heaven knows if ever a country has worked so hard, so peacefully, to actually be a success. And what I heard very much was the need for that to happen. I'd like to know about a strategy from the Commission in relation to Somalia, Somaliland. We hear about a strategy across the Horn, but actually specifically to that region. Going on to second point, one of the colleagues at the front spoke about, asked about the different ports. Of course, Berber Port, let's bring this into context. Berber Port actually houses, or did house, a runway, an emergency runway for the space shuttle, when the space shuttle missions were taking place. That's how great the infrastructure was up there. But does the Commission consider that the commercial deal entered into by Dubai Ports World with the Somaliland government legitimate, or do you consider that Somaliland cannot enter into legally binding agreements? Also wanted to know whether the Commission considers there's a risk that the Somaliland youth could be at risk at radicalisation if the country is not recognised. One thing I picked up from speaking with youth groups and civil society groups was very much that, you spoke of the openness and the desire for success. I really feel in Somaliland that can only come through international recognition. Could I have another minute, Chair? I've just got a couple of questions just to wrap up in relation to the November elections. Okay, I will be quick. Okay, I'll move on very quickly. The European Union financial support for the Somaliland election, is it in effect de facto recognition, as none of the Somaliland political parties support reunification with the south of Somalia? And is the Commission satisfied with the arrangements for that election taking place in November? Can they confirm whether Interpeace has played a major role in the preparations for that election? And if so, whether you're satisfied with Interpeace's performance? Thank you. I'll leave it there.
Thank you. James? Number of questions on Somaliland.
Okay. In brief, I don't have the time to do justice to all your questions, but in brief, the EU supports electoral processes anywhere. In Somalia, we've been supporting electoral processes, whether it's in Puntland or whatever else. That does not mean we're recognizing. What we're interested in is that citizens can be given the opportunity to deliberate. That's what we're interested in supporting. And that's the foundation, I think, of a lot of what we do in Somalia. So that, I think that's point one. So does our financial support imply recognition? Absolutely not at all. Secondly, on elections, well, I wish they'd just get on and have an election rather than keep delaying it, is my only answer. I mean, you know, what in heaven's name is going on here? And what it's doing is putting into question the legitimacy of the claims that Somalilanders have to a greater autonomy or statehood or whatever. I mean, that's what I'm frankly rather puzzled by. And it begs questions about what is this entity? What are the interests at play? How come there are these delays? This was the one thing that always stood on. It was such the stark contrast with the rest of Somalia. And they're frittering it away. Everyone's had a drought in the region. So I think that we should, I think, look at that. Now, on the rest, you know, may they continue and do as well as possible. The Berber report, yeah, it's a very sensitive issue at the end of the day. But then all the other states in Somalia, actually, have also come to agreements. And the issue here is whether there's some agreement that can be reached with Mogadishu so that Mogadishu can find a way of giving its blessing, and the parliament in Mogadishu can do so. And don't forget, there are many Somalilanders who are part of the parliament in Somalia. So it's a much more intricate set of trade-offs that need to be addressed.